Good morning. It's time to begin our class. Got several folks are back from vacation or whatever. We got a little bigger crowd this morning. Good to see everyone out ready to study this morning. We got the handouts coming out. A little short handout this morning, one page. Class this morning a little bit different, a little bit difficult. It's got a lot of names in it. David's mighty men, his army, family, names about that. So we'll do a little different takeoff on some things this morning, but we'll do little narrative stories. But it's not just the easy narrative to flow through like we do. We got stories, if you will, going through there. So we'll be in 2 Samuel 5, 1 Chronicles 11, 12, 14. That area there, you may flip back and forth a little bit. So we're going to read several verses from other places too to bring things into the story this morning. So we'll start off. 1 Chronicles 11. David should be made king over the entire nation. Remember, David has been in Hebron, king over just the Judah tribe, the tribe of Judah, down in the south. 7 years and 3 months there. And then 33 years as the king over all of it. So we're getting now, we're going to bring them all together and make him king over the whole thing. So let's look at that a minute. Okay, look at the setting now. Saul's dead. His son Jonathan's dead. So Ishbosheth has been killed, murdered last time. Two of the captains of the army he had taken to David, and they were killed because he had killed an innocent man, cold blood, if you will. And so the nation comes together, all Israel does, after Abner tried to pull them together. It says, we know it was really God's plan. We know this is God's plan. You be the leader over the whole nation. So we're here to make that start happening. So they come together, make a covenant with David to make him king over all of Israel. Now, let's think a minute about what David's done. We first introduced to David. Look at the next slide. We'll talk about it a little bit more. First introduced to David as just a young lad. And now he's come all the way from there. He's 30 years old. He's going to be king over all Israel. So the question is, through all this time, we've known David so far. What has never wavered in David? His faith, his trust in God, never wavered. All the time Saul's chasing him. All the time he put with the Philistines. Anything we know about David so far, he's been very faithful to God. Okay? Let's go back and look at that just a minute. Look back at 1 Samuel 16. Hold your fingers where you are. Flip back to 1 Samuel 16. This is where we're very first introduced to David. And what's the scene here? What's happening in 1 Samuel 16? They're going to Daniel comes to the house of Jesse in Bethlehem. Those are all the sons trying to find the right one to be anointed king. Because Saul's been rejected in chapter 15 because he didn't kill the Amalekites. And he comes there to anoint the king, and he goes to all the sons. And finally says, are there any more? And the young kid that's out keeping the sheep out there. Now, this is from the commentators. There's nothing we know about this. But Josephus, they say he was about 10 years old now. Some other commentators put him more like 15. So, take the 15. We're first introduced to David as a young shepherd who was anointed king at the age of, say, 15. And now he's 30, about to be made king. Okay? One other side thing that came to me here is who's this is Bishop BFF, this is the young social crowds. This is best friends forever. Jonathan and David have been very good close friends. We talked about that. Loved him as his own self, loved him. I thought this kind of ran across this little interesting thing. If in chapter 16, I think it's always exactly chronological, I understand that. But in chapter 16, David is 15 years old. Back up in chapter 14. Back a couple of chapters. What's Jonathan doing at the very first part of chapter 14? He died with his father getting ready to do battle with the Philistines, and he and his armor bearer goes up to the Philistine camp. So it seems to me then that Jonathan is already on a tour. He's out with Saul fighting in battles here. At this point, when David is still out keeping the sheep, 15 years old, he has to wind up being this best friend. Okay. Minor point, it's an observation type thing there. But it seems kind of interesting. You don't look at the ages of these people. You might think that Jonathan and David were exactly the same. I don't really think so. Based on this, I think Jonathan appears to be at least considerably older than what David would be. So this is a side-by thought. Okay, going back to 1 Chronicles 11. David is now going to, we talked about Jerusalem several times with their announcement, a nice reference point, right? Even with the top of the Dead Sea. But thus far, in all the history of Israel, during the time of the invasion and conquest, the judges, and through the reign of Saul, the Israelites have never controlled Jerusalem. It's been the city of the Jebusites all this time. So let's go back and look at some of these verses here. And we got several guys that's going to read some of these things here and get a little picture of what's happened to Jerusalem going through here. Who's got Joshua 15:63? Joshua 15:63. James, that's yours. Okay, let's go back to the time of Joshua here, Joshua chapter 15. When they came in and were driving the people out of the land, they didn't conquer Jerusalem. They didn't drive the Jebusites out. Now, let's stop and think that for a minute, this whole thing here. Where is Jerusalem located? Elevation-wise, it's right on the top of this mountainous range down through there. If you look at it, it's quite well protected city. It's got valleys on three sides of it. So it's a very hard city to get into and take from a strategic standpoint. They just didn't do it. Judges 1:21. Oh. Okay, same thing. The children of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites. It's another verse along the same line. So up until this point, they've not taken Jerusalem. Even though it's going to be this key city we're going to see here, going through here. All right, so David finally goes in now and captures the city of Jerusalem. Let's read some of these verses here about this. Deuteronomy 12:5, and then 10 and 11. That's it. All right, this is back when Moses is speaking back in the book of Deuteronomy, talking about what's going to happen when they get in the land of Israel. He says there's going to be a city, there's going to be a place where God's going to put his name. He's going to dwell there. There you'll bring all your burnt offerings and all your sacrifices into that city. Doesn't say where it is yet. Moses, that city is going to be designated. Let's just follow it through here a little bit. All right, now let's jump across to another prophecy in Isaiah chapter 2, verses 2 and 3. Or 1, 2, and 3. Okay, we're jumping way ahead now to the prophecies. Now the prophecies, what's going to happen in Jerusalem with the going out of the word of the Lord out here now. So there's the prophecies going to happen in David's already got Jerusalem now. Isaiah prophesied talking about what's going to really happen coming out of Jerusalem down there. So That's the city where God was going to put his name. David's going to capture it now. And then the prophecies are coming out of what's going to happen from Jerusalem down the road. Okay? Isaiah 2 and 3. All right. Next one is Luke 24. Got that one. Okay, where's the word of the Lord going to go out from? Where's this message going to start coming out from? We know this in the New Testament. It'll come out from Jerusalem. Okay, prophecy was there. David's going to capture it. Prophecy was there about what's going to happen there. That's where the Lord's going out from. Acts 1. Okay, what I'm trying to get here is the importance of the city of Jerusalem. Moses prophesied about it. David's going to capture it. He's going to make his throne there. It's going to be the central key in the city of Israel. Times to come. It's going to get worked out a few times. There's Babylon and different ones there. But Isaiah said something special is going to happen there. They were told to wait in Jerusalem. That's where the Lord's going to go out from. And now here it is in Acts 1. It's fixing to happen. We know in Acts 2 when the sermon came out there. So this whole new word is going to go out from Jerusalem down here. Now, the more verses stuck in here. Look at Matthew 24. Matthew 24, the first couple of verses. This is right before Jesus' crucifixion. Even though he's told them that the word of the Lord is going to go out from Jerusalem. Right before his crucifixion in Matthew 24, when the disciples are looking at the beauty of the temple. There are large stones there. What does it say in Matthew 24 about those? Who's got that one? What's going to happen shortly after Christ died for the city of Jerusalem? The Romans are going to wipe it out. Not one stone left on another. The significance of the physical earthly Jerusalem has fulfilled its purpose. Moses prophesied about it. David captured it. The throne's there. Isaiah prophesied about what's going to come out from Jerusalem. That's where the Lord went out from when the apostles first preached that sermon. But the city's going to be destroyed. Who's got Revelation? What Jerusalem is important to us. That physical Jerusalem had a place, had a purpose. The beginning of it is right now with David. He captured the Jebusites. God's purpose with it was fulfilled. It was destroyed. And now what's important for us? That New Jerusalem. The key to David, it says in Revelation 3 there. That's what we're looking for. That New Jerusalem. So we're talking about the physical Jerusalem here, but I just want to take a minute and see how it's used kind of quickly all through history here, and yet how this gets wiped out. The nation of Israel is no more from that standpoint. Jerusalem's not important anymore. New Jerusalem. Important to us. Okay? Any thoughts about that? Yes, Mike. Yep. 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 I started making that point. I said, Matt, I'm going there, but maybe you might as well do it. Yeah, our country is hung up on the fact that we've got to defend Israel because Jerusalem is still that great, big, important city. It's things you got to happen in. Not true. Okay. New Jerusalem is what's important to us. It's the New Jerusalem, not that physical Jerusalem now. It served its purpose. It had a purpose. Moses talked about it and brought it all the way forward. But not for us now. Our side is the New Jerusalem. Okay. All right. Back to our story here, narrative a little bit. Hiram, who is Hiram? King of what? Hiram is king of Tyre, and he sends the materials, cedars and craftsmen and masons and all this material down to build David a house, a physical house he's going to build for David in Jerusalem, which is now recognized in the nations around Jerusalem. How David is really the king, how important he is, and what the nation of Israel is going to do. But we're going to see in a minute go out and wipe out the Philistines a couple of times here. So keep in mind as David is now getting a physical house built in the city of Jerusalem. Now, this chapter gets into naming all these men. If you read through it, it's just kind of, I don't be ugly about it, kind of boring, just name after name after name, half of them we can't pronounce, things like. But there's a couple of points here that's pretty important. When David started out, if you look back at some of these passages here in 1 Samuel chapter 11 and 12 here, when David first starts out, he's got this small group of men. Remember going to the cave of Adullam? He had this group of men that went with him there, and often he's down through Ziklag and this stuff, and Saul's chasing him. If you look at it, it's about 400 men there. So David had about 400 men. We talked about they were kind of the scoundrels of the earth, maybe, that came to join with David. Some of those start forming his mighty men he's got. But if you look in chapter 11, a little side note here, chapter 11, verse 41, there's one of his mighty men that's listed that can come into play later on. That's Uriah the Hittite. Get that over about chapter 11 and 12 of 2 Samuel. So he's the husband of who? Bathsheba. Okay, it's going to come into play. But David had these 400 men. Now let's look at the thing. This last part of this chapter mentions all this massive people that comes into Jerusalem to make David king. You go through Adam all up. Probably hadn't done it. Got any idea what the number comes up to? Something like this. How many people came into Jerusalem there to make David king? Humongous, massive people from all parts of Israel coming in. He said, well, how they have any people, how they feed them? Well, you read, it says they brought in raisin cakes of figs and raisins and sheep and cattle to slaughter. They brought through some of their own provisions, and their brothers had provisions for them. They came to Jerusalem for a purpose. They're going to make David king. They were doing a massive celebration because of the nation. All right, we're going to kind of leave David's army and his capture of Jerusalem now, and that part, because that's where things are going to center from now. Let's look at chapter 14 and talk about David's family just a minute. I already know he got some sons born from 2 wives, from Abigail, and other names slipped me all of a sudden, sorry. But now we got some more. As he goes into Jerusalem, gets settled, he takes more wives and more concubines. And it was a very prominent thing then, large family, particularly the king, when he's got lots of wives, have lots and lots of children, and that just shows some of your power and some of your might and things there. So David got these extra wives, concubines while he's in Jerusalem, and had a number of sons are born to him in Jerusalem. And Amnon will come to the story later, Amnon and Tamar. Absalom will come to the story later on, because Absalom rebels against David. The 2 here we're going to look at in a minute. One of them we know a lot about, Solomon. The other one we may not recognize, know much about. Notice Nathan. It's not Nathan the prophet that comes to David. It's the son of David named Nathan. These two here are very important. Very different roles here. Let's look at them a minute. Christ is going to come from the lineage of David. Everybody remembers that? Christ comes through the tribe of Judah back in Genesis 49. Christ is going to come from the lineage of David. But he comes through two different lines of David. Joseph is his earthly or legal family. He comes through Mary as the real family, the real bloodline. Of course, there was no bloodline from Joseph, physical bloodline, because he was not really the son of Joseph. He was born of a virgin. So how do these two play in here? All right, somebody's got Romans 1 through 4, I think. Who's got that one? Romans 1? Look at it. Somebody? That's right. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, yeah, 3 and 4. There's 1 through 4. Wait, Andy, I'm sorry. 1 through 4, yeah. Verse 3. Born of the seed of David according to the flesh. Fleshly lineage of David. Okay? Can't come through Joseph. That's not the fleshly lineage. That's the legal lineage. Let's look at these two here. Matthew chapter 1, you have the lineage of Christ given. Okay? And if you look at that, in Matthew chapter 1, you come down and look at that verse 6, it says that Jesse begot David the king. David the king begot Solomon, who had been the wife of Uriah. So the lineage through Matthew is David and then Solomon. It's just leading down to Joseph. And Christ being the son of Joseph. That's not a fleshly line. Okay? Now look over in Luke, and you have the lineage of Jesus given there. In Luke, if you look at chapter 3, verse 31, it says that the son of Nathan, the son of David. And you can look at that one, it goes through Mary, not through Joseph. So 2 of David's sons, Nathan and Solomon. Look at their descendants all the way down through time here. It winds up with Joseph coming through Solomon and Mary coming through Nathan. Of course, they're joined. She has the child Jesus, not from fleshly relations, but because of the Holy Spirit. So Jesus comes through the lineage of Nathan through Mary, Solomon through Joseph. Both, 2 different lineages. Both coming from David. The royal line and the fleshly line. Coming through David. Okay? I'm totally confused. I got you here now. 2 different lineages. One given to Matthew, one given to Luke. One comes through Mary, one comes through Joseph. But Mary is a fleshly line. Joseph is a legal or royal line. Okay. Sideline. Let's jump over and talk about David and the ark. Let's talk about the ark itself. A little background of the ark. Back in 1 Samuel chapter 4, the Philistines captured the ark. The Israelites had actually physically taken the ark. We're talking about the Ark of the Covenant now, the little small box, the cherubim on top. It had this very special purpose. We'll see in a minute what it was actually made for. They had captured it. They taken it out in battle and they captured it. But they stayed in the temple and the tabernacle during all the wandering in the wilderness, there in the most holy place. And then in chapter 5, when they did capture it, put it in their temples, their idol god, Dagon. They came back in the next morning. He had fallen down and broken himself because the ark, God's presence being there on the ark. And Dagon had come to pieces, if you will. So they finally took it and sent it back, put it on the ox cart and sent it back to Israel. It winds up in this town of Kiriath Jearim, which is outside Jerusalem, a little ways over to the west. They stayed there. Let's think about how long it stayed there a minute. David decided he'll get it back. That's where it ought to be. Go back and look at all this time. The Israelites asked for a king in what chapter? Chapter 8. The ark's captured back in chapter 4. All this happened way back before they ever asked for a king. There's a time here now. So the ark's in there. Chapter 7, they had limited to 20 years. Solomon reigned for 40 years. David's already reigned 7.5 years in Hebron before he goes to Jerusalem. We don't know how long Samuel reigned in there. You add all this up. The ark's been in Kiriath Jearim most like probably 70 years or so. Sitting over there. This special piece of furniture that was built with a cherubim on it, and I need to read what verse. I think I got it down here. Yeah, Exodus 25. Who's got that one? I'll jump ahead here. God gave instructions for building the tabernacle and all this furniture in the mercy seat. He says, from there between the cherubim, I will meet with you. I will speak to you from there. That's where God's presence was with the people when they were wandering in the wilderness, and where it's going to be in the temple. It's God's place where he was going to dwell among the people. Was this Ark of the Covenant. And yet it's been gone for 70 years. And nobody seemed to care. Saul didn't make an effort to bring it back. But David's now decided it's time to bring it back to Jerusalem. Yes, sir. Yeah, he got right. It's just lost out there, yes. Yeah. Just push aside what Saul's main thing he wants to do, get David. Right? So the ark has had this significance. David says it's time to get it back where it belongs. So he makes his plans to go and get it. Saul had not cared to get it back there. So I read this verse here because the ark represents God's presence among the people. David recognized where it ought to be. That was not overstuck in, you will, stuck in some barn somewhere. Stories. So, good idea to go get it, bring it back. But we don't get to that till Wednesday night. Okay. Here's the gotcha. When you read the passages for Wednesday night's lesson, I want you to look and pay particular attention to this little phrase we talked about, inquire of the Lord. When you read in 1 Chronicles 15, 16, 17, whatever we got there. Yeah, 1 Chronicles 13, 15, and 16. 2 Samuel 6. What's for Wednesday night? I want you to look and watch for this phrase, inquire of the Lord. And David starts bringing the ark back to Jerusalem. Very significant. Very significant. So watch this phrase as you read these passages for Wednesday night. Inquire of the Lord. Okay, lesson this morning is a little bit different. It wasn't this a nice narrative flow through thing here. Questions, comments, things we missed anywhere? What to talk about? The ark had been in the tabernacle all this time. When the tabernacle was set up, they would take it down and move it during the wandering in the wilderness. That's where the ark had been. That's where God's presence is. In the most holy place, not the holy place, in the most holy place. Visited only once a year, the high priest. And I was reading a piece this morning. Got to take off on that. The high priest, during the whole time of the Old Testament law, the high priest wore this very fancy, if you will, garment, made specifically with all these trimmings and special things on it, almost like the king's robe that the high priest wore. He was ministering to the people on God's behalf, the high priest, between the people and God. He wore this magnificent, if you will, uniform, garment. You ever notice what once a year when he went into the most holy place on the Day of Atonement, what the high priest wore then? Didn't wear this. He had very simple, plain clothes that he put on to go into the most holy place this one time a year. Because now who's he going to see? Not the people, not representing God to the people with his magnificent attire. What's he now doing? He's representing the people before God. So he has much more the attire of a slave or a plain, simple person. Because now he's going to the presence of God representing the people. An entirely different attire he puts on when he goes to the most holy place. Because that's where the ark was. That's where God's presence dwelt all this time. Now that same ark has been used, as Mike said, as a tool of war by Saul to take out the battle lines to scare the Philistines off, and capture it, and they put it in their temples, and their gods fall down and break to pieces with them. And his whole purpose that they just ignored. David said it's time to bring it back. David been much more godly man than Saul was. David said it's time to bring it back, put it in the proper place. Of course, David's going to turn around now and try to build a temple for it, put it in. Of course, Solomon built a temple for that. Yeah, what Mike's saying is the man whose house was kept in during these 70, estimated 70 years, was blessed by the Lord. Now, as you read next week's lesson, David is unsuccessful in bringing it back to Jerusalem. He stays in the house of Obed-Edom for 3 months. Notice what's said about him, too. Same thing. He's blessed with the ark there. Okay. Note that as you read tonight's class. All right, let's run through a couple of these 4 slides that we've done before, just to review here a little bit. I want you to know this stuff, so you all know it. Down in Tuscaloosa yesterday, my little first grade grandchild was spouting off these periods of Bible history. Marcus Toller taught them that Bob Waldron taught him, and he taught them down there. And it's like our kids know back here. And they learned them, they learned what to put in those boxes, what to put in those different periods here. Let's learn the passages with it. Before the flood fits in the first 5 chapters of Genesis. Everybody should have that down pat by now. 5 chapters covers the part period before the flood. The flood's in the next 5 chapters. Genesis 6 through 10 talks about the flood, all the events surrounding it, and Noah, the ark, whatever. You got this one little chapter in there that talks about the scattering of the people. Come out of the Tower of Babel. They will build a name for themselves. God confuses the language, and they're scattered. Then we got Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then the story of Joseph getting into Egypt. That's the rest of the book of Genesis, 12 through 50. Those things always be stuck in your mind. So if you start talking about the patriarchs, you just turn over and not where to go to it. And then, again, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, know your books in there. The Exodus is obviously going to be the Exodus, Exodus, Leviticus, and the first 13 chapters of Numbers. The story of the Exodus is going out, away from Egypt, and going up, ready to spy out the land, and going to take the land. But they didn't take the land of faith. So you get to wandering in the wilderness. It's the rest of Numbers, Deuteronomy, and the first part of the book of Joshua. Wandering in the wilderness. Now, Joshua's going to lead the invasion and conquest, so we should know, okay, that's going to be the book of Joshua, right? So we'll get Joshua the rest of it, 4 through 24. And then the book of Judges is pretty easy, but it gets the book of Judges. So Ruth goes in there, and we get the first part of 1 Samuel up until they get the king. Saul's anointed. That fits into Judges. And now we're the United Kingdom. We all know what that is. That's the rest of 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, the first part of 1 Kings. And then the parallel, we've been in the parallel the last 2 or 3 classes. We go from 1 Chronicles, chapter 10, up through 2 Chronicles, chapter 9. We've got parallel passages going on here. That's United Kingdom. But now we go, and then kind of broke it down a little bit. Saul, David, and Solomon, and the part that covered them. Saul is basically in 1 Samuel, David is 2 Samuel, and then Solomon's in the first part of 1 Kings. So if you want to find anything about David, reign, his kingdom, go to 2 Samuel. You got a little bit of his life before that, maybe with Saul, but his reign itself is 2 Samuel. Then moving on from there, divided kingdoms next. That's the 1 Kings and 2 Kings. There's a parallel there in 2 Chronicles. And then we got Judah alone, finishes out 2 Kings, and finishes out 2 Chronicles. Captivity, you got a couple of prophets that right here at that time, Daniel and Ezekiel. Mentioned before, Daniel's with the royalty and the courts of the king. Ezekiel's out with the people. So you got 2 different prophets writing about the captivity from different perspectives. And then the return. These are the books that cover that. Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, they're kind of in order. But Ezra, Haggai, Zechariah, Esther, Nehemiah, Malachi. Malachi, according to be in the last book. But now we go to the years of silence. So there's no scripture for that. Life of Christ is really easy. Everybody knows that that's the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then the early church is basically covered in Acts. Of course, all the letters, the epistles will be, and the churches will be the epistles of Revelation. Let's get those things in mind. It's nice, easy to put them all in order out there. Go through that. Okay, anything else this morning? Got 2 minutes. All right, Wednesday night we start moving the ark. Well, as I get skilled, we touched it. Read that story. Be ready for it Wednesday night. Thank you.